everybody on the chat tonight for your comments. Well, hello, beekeeper folks. Welcome to another episode of the Bee Inspiration, and we are so glad you're here. I'm sure we'll have more people to pop in as we go. A few things to kind of go over. We want to say an extra prayer for Melissa, who's been having some problems going on, and then Lee's family. I think he's got a cousin or somebody that's been sick. Let's continue to pray for him in that situation. And then I don't know if Tar Heel Beekeeper's on here, but he is wax dipping boxes here in North Carolina. So if you need some boxes waxed, Randy, the Tar Heel Beekeeper, there he is wax dipping boxes. And I got 6 done. They look great. They had tons of knots. He looked at me like I was crazy last time I was down there and got them wax dip. But I felt like I was going to see how well wax dip boxes did. So they were like coal 3s. Let's put it that way. They were horrible. But anyway, he wax dipped those for me. They look great. They're working good. Bees seem to like it. So need some wax dip boxes. That's the way to go. Unlike Keith Spillman that right here, it has rained up on the mountain 6 out of the 7 days since last Thursday. And it has been a mess up here. It is center, poplar, blackberries, locust bloom. It is all bloomed out. And as I was driving into work this morning after the heavy rain last night, we had poplar blooms laying on the highway. So
not good.
Totally upset to see that already. We have some elevation in the mountains, so even though we're losing some maybe in the valleys, maybe on up, we're still okay to get some flow. And some of the bees are actually bringing in nectar. So I have talked to a few beekeepers, and they say the nectar is still coming in, even though they're having to get it between rain, and I'm sure it's all diluted down. So you're not getting that high quality nectar that you really, really want. So, anyway, we got a special guest, Keith Spillman, here with us. And how's it going off the mountain? I know you're stopped, but you raked the honey in this year. I am so jealous.
We've had a good year. Appreciate you having me on. We've had it's rained a little bit over 2 inches the past couple of days down here, but we were kind of the tulip poplar was on the way out anyway, and that was about all that was going on. It's not much happening at the moment, but the ladies were bringing in something before the rain started, and today after when the sun finally did pop out a little bit, they were wide open again. I don't know. I looked around and it don't look like the persimmons are blooming. The ones that I have, the crepe myrtles aren't blooming. The mimosas aren't blooming. So I don't have a clue what they're going after unless they found a big patch of clover somewhere. But I reached down and picked up on a couple of hives, and I'm going to be putting my escape boards on tomorrow morning, and we'll be pulling honey on Saturday. So they've snuck some in from somewhere.
Wow.
So yeah, there's more on the hives than I thought there was. So we'll see. We'll see. Bees are amazing little critters.
They are. And I will say the colonies that I got up here had a lot of nectar in the top of them. So, and they're doing great. So I do appreciate you taking care of those for me. That was absolutely awesome. So,
okay. I hope they do good for you.
Yep. Yeah. I hope they do too. So, JW, how's things going at your place?
About the same as, what Mr. Spillman's got there. Well, everything here is in bloom. I've even got my persimmons are budding out. They're starting to bloom. I've got what they call rough leaf. Senior moment. Oh, the little tree that blooms at Easter.
Oh, the little Easter flowers or whatever. Is that what it is?
No, the tree that's they associate with Easter. You know what I'm talking about? That blooms at Easter time. There's a,
Hmm.
Tom, do you
there's a
know?
pardon me.
Seeing if Tom knows which one that is.
I don't think he knows what he's talking about.
Oh yes,
That's my buddy, y'all. That's my
I
buddy.
just can't think of it. Or dogwood.
Oh, dogwood.
Oh,
Dogwood
dogwood.
is blooming
Yeah.
now. It has a leaf that's or a bloom. It looks like
Do the bees mess with the
like a
dogwood
head
that
of
much?
cauliflower or something. And it's blooming right now. The regular dogwoods usually, they'll bloom usually around Easter. That's what. Usually they start blooming in April, but these roughly deals and the persimmons just now budding out here. If y'all got persimmons or not, Tom does, but I don't know. You got persimmons over there, Keith? I don't. Persimmon trees?
Persimmon trees.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've got several around here. They've got some buds on them, but they hadn't started blooming yet. I thought that might be what I thought that might be what the bees were going after, but they're not blooming. At least they aren't on my property.
Yeah.
So, that's next in line around here, persimmon, and then some mimosa. And then there's not a whole lot going on till the goldenrod and the asters. So then we got the dearth in the middle there. So we'll see.
Now, Keith, do you not get any sourwood or basswood in your area?
I think we're a little bit too far east for basswood. I really don't see any of that. They might have some up in the western part of the county. I had some. I extracted some honey for some folks last year that had a kind of a minty flavor, and some folks said maybe that came from basswood. And they were up in the far western, right next to Wilkes County, up in the western part of Yadkin. So, but I don't think I have any around here. Nothing to speak of anyway. Sourwood, gosh, we've got lots of sourwood trees around here, but we don't have enough elevation to make much nectar.
Wow.
From what I understand, you really need to be 1,200, 1,500 foot before you start getting much out of them. And we're right a little bit over 900 foot down here. So I'm sure the bees get some pollen off of it, but I don't think they get a lot of nectar off the sourwoods. But yeah, along 421 heading up your way, the sides of the highway are just loaded with sourwood.
Just covered. And I can't wait. I just bought me a trailer, and I'm going to take my bees off the mountain where Keith's at because I'm so jealous. And I'm going to follow them up the mountain to where we're at now with the flow, and then I'm going to take them back where that sourwood's at, and I'm going to park that trailer there. So I'm going to have a moving caravan of honeybees for just honey. So I don't really like honey, but that's what I'm going to do because I'm jealous that Keith gets it all the honey. None of us else gets to share any of it. So I'm going to go down there and take some away from him. So
okay, that'll be fine. There's enough for all of us.
Tom, give us an update on how Melissa's doing. And if you don't mind, talk a little bit about what me and you talked about yesterday about your production colonies. You really don't go into those and mess with them very much. And that's the same thing that I do. But I'd like you to talk a little bit about that also. But give us an update with Melissa and go for it.
All right. Well, Melissa's as feisty as ever, as you can imagine, right? No, she just she's had to go back in for another procedure and such. And basically, the short of it would be she still has some pain and a little bit of healing to do, but all will be well. Prayers work, and that's what we're leaning on a little bit there, so that she can get some comfort and all. But everything's fine. Everything will be good. So she's. Sometimes recovery takes just a little bit of time, so and that's just kind of what we're on. So it's not a big deal. It's just, I'm not the best person when it comes to nurturing, I'm the guy that does really good outside in the trenches. That's my place. That's what I do. I'm good at taking care of all that when it comes to, that nurturing part. That's just where I lack a little bit, but you know what? I mean, I'm doing my best here and I think all's working out well. So anyway, appreciate all the thoughts and prayers and the well wishes and such that people have offered up, and that really means a lot to us for sure. Thinking of some really good friends that kind of following up. So anyway, that's kind of the short of it with that. So yeah, we were just kind of talking a little bit yesterday about, inspections and what, we all do as far as, how you kind of maybe manage, just light management techniques and stuff. But then the one thing that we mentioned about was on production colonies, when you have gotten to the point, and in our area that, oh boy, that usually is somewhere around, I'm going to say the tail end of April, beginning of May-ish, somewhere in there. And, Missouri is just so bipolar. At the Midwest, it can be, I don't know, it's just all over the place when it comes to early spring. You can have warm days, you can have frigid cold days, you can have temperature swings that go 60 degrees in a handful of hours. It can be dry, it can be cold, and all that good stuff. So that kind of varies just a little bit, but the timing is about, what I mentioned, late April-ish, May. And as they're starting to brood up, I don't like to throw the honey supers on immediately. And sometimes Melissa kind of gets on me for that a little bit, but it's the difference of, yeah, it's the difference of how I like to do things and how she likes to do things. And I don't know. I just, I like to carve my own path when it comes to things, and sometimes I don't want to take advice, sometimes I just want to do my own thing. Right. So probably why I've worked for myself for the last 25 years. But anyway, nonetheless, so basically when we get down to supering our colonies, I don't do a whole lot of management in the production colonies. Now, that doesn't mean I don't get in bees, because I get in bees quite literally almost every day. Even if it's not for an hour or two in the evening after I finished up some additional work, or maybe I've been in them all day for 12 hours. It just depends. But I don't really dive down into the nest because, if you had 1 or 2 or 3 hives, that would be easy to do that. If you have 75, 80, 100 hives and it's not your full-time line of work, that's difficult to go down in every brood nest and unstack 1 super, 2 supers, 3, 4, whatever that looks like. I mean, I'm all for being a good steward of those bees and managing them well, but you kind of learn these little tips and tricks and these little practices along the way, and they're not all foolproof because, let's be honest with ourselves here for a minute. If you think that you've got it all figured out one year, I'm telling you what, God is going to humble you, and he's going to do it very quickly. And he's going to throw something in there that makes puts you right back in check. At least that's my experience. So I don't have time to go down in each one of them, and I don't want to lift off several boxes as they're in honey production mode. I'd let them do their thing. Now, what I do typically do as far as manage it, if I am going through a yard and I have, 25 colonies, 30 colonies, whatever that might be in there, and I'm going across and I'm looking at the entrances to all these colonies, and if all of them look same, but I see one colony that is light or something looks off, it doesn't look the same as the others.
Yep.
That's the one I'm going to pick. I'm going to go in there, I'm going to pull some boxes off, and I'm going to do an inspection. And most time I pull the supers off, stack them off to the side, and I dive right down the middle of the brood nest, and I want to see what it looks like. Maybe they've swarmed. Maybe they're requeening. Maybe they're queenless. Who knows? Any number of things can happen. But you can gain a lot of information just by looking at the entrance to the colony, especially if you have a couple side by side. So that's kind of how I do some management when I've gotten to that. Now, sometimes I will go pick randomly, go through a couple of colonies and look inside the brood nest and kind of see what that looks like. Because if I go in the brood nest and I say, hey, the colony numbers look good, everything looks nice in there. The larva is pearly white. The really young larva that just hatched has all kinds of nutrition around it. And I see everything that looks cohesive, it sounds cohesive, and it smells cohesive. I put it back together and I just leave it alone. So I'll do that with random ones. But, once the supers go on and they start building honey, I kind of leave them alone. Yeah, there's times I have to come back and fix a colony that started to collapse, or sometimes it gets beyond that, and it'll happen. Sometimes I can catch it though. And then, we build a lot of nukes, and we still have nukes running right now, and are focusing harder on those and building those up. So the production colonies, they don't get as much attention until we start to pull the honey supers and then check mites and, figure out our mode of action. So I mean, that's kind of the long way around it, but
I'm with you on that. Yeah, I'm on the same thing with you, Tom. I did the same way. Once I get that brood nest set in place and it's going good and I'm starting to add those supers, unless I see something, I'm not going to go back in there. I'm going to let them roll. We'll see we'll let these other guys comment on that also. Matt, is that kind of what you do, or do you have a different take on that?
No, I pretty much try to leave them alone, unless there's an issue. I try to, all our production colonies, as JW knows, on April 1st, I'm usually going in and taking it to 4 frames of brood. 4 frames of brood with the queen, so I do split them, but I'm also trying to sell nukes out of those splits. So, it's funny you say that, because I don't make a habit of going into the brood chamber unless I need to, but I did have to on a production colony that I saw actually swarm. And so I went in there a couple of days after I saw it happen, and it had to have been a mother-daughter situation, because there was another queen in there all the way in the bottom box. 2 supers and 2 Ds I saw, and finally found her. But there's no queen cells on any of the frame, just all cat brood. And no eggs or larvae. So it was definitely the hive that swarmed. I mean, I saw it happen, but they had already replaced that queen, or I had a queen in place with no queen cells. So I'm thinking it more than likely was a mother-daughter situation. Pretty big hive. I mean, good size population. So luckily I was able to catch the swarm and move them to another yard. So, but yeah, other than that, I try not to get into the chamber. I mean, actually, I think you set them back. They build all that ladder comb and what you think is burr comb on the top bars, because they can't reach the bottom bars of the top box without that, So that 3/8 bee space is actually the space the bee can reach too without their own ladder system. So just try to be as efficient as possible and not get into endless needs.
Before we get to Keith Spillman here, who is the master honey man, let's go to JW and see what he does with that. And you mess with your production colonies, JW? Just let them roll.
Ricky, I taught those other 2 guys everything they know. They're just copying what I taught them.
That's true. True story.
That's what I've already taught them. That's all I know to tell you. I mean, there's no use going into big detail. Get to Mr. Spillman, and
we'll go to the master.
Him anything that Keith knows. He's out of my territory, so I haven't taught him anything. So anything he knows ought to be. He says he ought to be new information. These other 2 guys, they're just dead weight. They're they're just along for the ride.
Hey, this is why I love that guy right there. I love that about him. You can't stop.
I'm just kidding, folks. Actually, I think they like one another. I don't know why.
JW, all around the world, folks are blessed by your wisdom.
Yeah.
Absolutely, we are.
Well, poor folks. All I can tell you. God bless them.
JW, you have your own retinue, buddy.
Yes, he does. That's exactly what he has. Hey, Matt, do you think it's his pheromone?
I think it must be. Yep. It's somewhere down in the DNA. It's just leaking through.
I think
I can say something to that too. Be smart alecky, but I'm not going to. I'm starting to straighten up now.
All right, Keith. Tell us your situation. What do you do with your production colonies? Anything? Leave them alone. Let them roll.
I'm just like most of what y'all said and what Brian said. I work hard, to keep them from swarming. Early March, gosh, I'm into them every 4 or 5 days. But once the supers go on, I'm not in the brood chamber anymore. Like Tom said, I'm not going to dig off 4 supers and then dig into the brood area. Like a tourist, you can tell what's going on without digging down there. Mm-hmm. But from being here, Ricky, I've got my production hives, and I've got the splits and swarms and nukes and all the other hives. Now those are the ones I can still play with. There's no reason not to go in those and check and see what's going on. See if you got to add a box, what's going on. Did they make a queen? All the usual stuff. So I still have plenty of bees to play with. But it's kind of funny. I'm mentoring, I think 5 different people right now. And they were blowing my phone up today, just dying to get into their hives. Now, all of them are making honey too. They've got supers on, but they've done some splits. They've got some smaller hives too. I try to mimic what I do at their yards is exactly what I'm doing in my yards. So it's easier for me to keep up with that way if everybody's the same. They all run mediums and they all get managed the same way. But yeah, they're all going crazy wanting to dig into their hives because we hadn't done an inspection, since really since the end of March. We've pulled supers, we've extracted honey, we've checked the splits and all, but we haven't been into the big hives. And, one guy, he was just going crazy. I'm like, well, they're your hives. You can do what you want to.
Yeah, that's right.
You don't have to wait for me to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope he didn't take that as being mean because it's the truth. They don't have to wait for me. Gosh, he knows how to do an inspection. If he wants to look.
Absolutely.
It's just extra work pulling all this stuff off. So, but yeah, I pretty much leave them alone. Once I pull my supers off this round, I might do a couple of inspections. It's according to how many supers I pull. I don't really know what I've got until I start lifting them up tomorrow and putting the escape boards on. I might have more than I think I do. If that's the case and they're still going crazy, I'll stick the wets back on as quick as I can, and we'll just keep rolling as long as it'll last. But at some point, I do want to get the supers off because I want to do my late July, early August OA treatment.
Treatments, yep.
And I try my best not to have supers on there when I do that. So that's kind of the plan for right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a good question there from Queen Bee. I'm not specifically familiar with what it sounds like they're asking if anybody cages the queen when the nectar flow starts to increase the honey production. I've never done that myself, actually. Probably because if I'm being perfectly honest, and I think most people have heard me say this, I don't care about maximum honey production. We started last year. We'll build some kind of later season nucleus colonies to try to overwinter. So for me, I'm looking for brood. So if I was to cage her, I'd lose out on some brood. But I guess the idea behind that is it ages up some of the workforce inside the colony where they don't have to have the other tasks of tending to some of the young larvae and brood inside there, where they can kind of focus more on honey production. It's kind of an idea. And I'd be curious to know if anybody in here has actually done that and if it works for them. That probably is my guess is dependent upon a specific area. Everybody's that's just so wildly, vastly different when it comes to honey production, plants, what you have in your area, soil types, nutrition, moisture, all that stuff is just all these things play into it. And we try to do our best to kind of figure that out and manage all these little things, just kind of gain our maximum result, whatever that might be. But I don't know. I've never done that. You ever done that before, Keith?
Not on purpose. I've had queens die or something happen to the queen during the honey production, and that hive, from looking at it, you really never know anything happened because they made a lot of honey. But then when you finally go in there, there's not a bit of brood.
Yeah.
So that's when you go raid your resource hives and get everything back like it should be. But I really didn't know that was a technique that anybody did do. But I could see that kind of working. If you really wanted to squeeze every drop of honey out of the hive, you could.
Mm-hmm.
But no, never done it on purpose.
Yeah. What about you, Matt?
I have not. No. I mean, I could see potentially as a mite treatment, to give a brood break, but you don't want to cage it for too long. I guess it just depends on time of year, and I don't think that I'm not trying to cage my queen unless there's an issue or I'm introducing a virgin or another mated queen or something like that. That's really the only time that, or I'm finding her in the swarm, to get her in the box for the bees to trail in there. But aside from that, yeah, I mean, I keep 2 queen cages in my front pocket for and on the fly type needs, but I don't necessarily do that per se. I did. I guess Mark Miller would have to come on and kind of describe that technique, but I did help him do that on a handful of his colonies down there for requeening and keeping them from drawing cells.
Mm-hmm.
So kept the queen cage down in the brood chamber, and then that way he could drop in another queen, swap her out type thing was his technique. So
Yeah. I've definitely heard that before, where people will actually requeen during the nectar flow. I think that's pretty common, and I understand it works very, very well. Some people will specifically wait for that, which makes a lot of sense, really. So it's not really like caging a queen, but I guess it kind of maybe serves the same purpose. If I'm guessing correctly, caging a queen, you're keeping her from laying. They focus all their efforts, energy, instead of rearing brood, to the honey production. And if you requeen, then let's say you have something caged in there, or you pull the other queen, drop the virgin in, whatever your method or technique was, kind of create the same thing, I suppose.
There's a lot of different ways to get to that end result of very healthy bees, and I think any little trick and trade that people can do successfully is what it's all about, so they make it work well. And that's what, that would be my recommendation. They experiment and see what works.
Yeah. And what works for one may not work for the other. And honestly, I think that's where these chats come in and shine. Sometimes our content seems like it gets a little bit mundane and a little boring, but things like this, where people are kind of, stimulating a little bit of new information, I think is really great. It's nothing that I've tried. I don't have firsthand experience with it, but when you think about it, like logically, it would seem like that would work, and you could cover a couple bases, like you said. You can actually do a brood break, a potential treatment of OA vapor if that's what you choose to do. Maybe increase a little bit of honey production. Maybe kill a few birds with one stone.
It's a lot like kind of like playing chess. You make a move, and that move is going to affect what happens in the next couple of weeks, big time. If it's a good move, you'll have success, or you can make a dumb move or a bad move, and it'll set you back real quick. So, it's like a little chess game. So it's every hive's a little different. So that's what's part of the fun.
Well, you're always kind of like playing games or playing that chess move with Mother Nature, because, you're trying to set up the nest inside there, and the colony numbers for, let's just say your goal is to produce maximum amount of honey in that colony in that season. That's your number one goal. That's probably the biggest play or move right there, in my opinion, because you're trying to push that colony to the maximum number of bees in there so that they can put away, just pounds and pounds of nectar, but you want to keep them in the box. And where's that fine line, because every colony, I don't think that fine line is in the same position. And if you're managing more than just a small handful of colonies, that can look vastly different from yard to yard even, So that I think is that art part of the beekeeping, which, man, I'll tell you, I've used this before in presentations. Bob Binney has got it figured out. When he says it's 50% art and 50% science, I could not agree with that. I agree with that 110%,
Yeah, that's the art part of it's the hard part to teach the new folks that you're trying to help. Because so many times you'll see something and you'll react to it. You'll do something like, well, why'd you do that? It's like, well, because it needed doing.
That's right.
But yeah, that just comes with time and seeing all the crazy things that can happen. And when you turn certain knobs, what that causes. And, that's, to me, that's kind of what distinguishes the successful beekeepers from the ones that maybe aren't as successful, as having a lot of tools in their bag of tricks. When you open up a hive and it's, well, sometimes it's what you expect, but a lot of times you open it up and it's not what you expect, and you have to be able to react to it. If you don't know what to do, just put the top back on and leave it alone and think about it. Don't just turn into Godzilla and start ripping stuff apart.
That's right. Have a plan, right? Be able to think on your feet.
Always have a plan. Don't be a tourist.
Yeah. You're always playing that. Does anybody else, is this just me, or is everybody else in the spring when everything is just growing rapidly? Do you feel like you are playing firefighter like for weeks on end, or is it just me and just poor decision making?
No, it's
every year
when that momentum gets going, the wind gets caught in that sail. something
Yeah.
to behold, and those bees grow. It's just an amazing sight, and everyone on here in this chat knows of it, and that it's just an awesome feeling, and to keep up with it is the challenge. But that's why I'm in it.
Oh yeah. But that's one thing too. You mentioned a while ago the differences in the beekeepers across the country. I enjoy hearing what's going on in all the different corners of the U.S. And Mike Berry made a good point in one of his videos, as far as their season down there starts early. They start playing with bees in January, middle of January, early February, but they really don't have a flow until his spring flow was after mine was. So he had been playing with bees for a couple of months before anything happened down there. Where up here, I start playing with the bees, the end of February, inspect, try to keep them from swarming. I had my supers on March the 10th. So here, the bees fire up and the flow hits all about the same time. So it's a totally different thing than what Mike sees where he's at.
That's right.
He has a lot of beekeeping before anything happens, and I just jump right out of bed and here we go. There's no easing into it. So the only thing I do to get ahead of the bees is when I put the supers on early. But past that point, you're at their mercy. You can't say, I'm going to pull honey every 10 days. Well, no, you might pull it every 5 days. You might pull it every 20 days. You don't know. So the rain can come. There's too many variables there. So, yeah, you're kind of at the bee's mercy by design. You don't know exactly what they're going to do, and you have to react to it and roll.
Yeah, that's right. That's probably the one thing that keeps me so locked into these girls, honestly, is the fact that, and if you ask me at the time when I'm having a rough day, I want to be like, you know what? These girls have absolutely got me fired up. You went into the bee yards to do one goal, completely wrecked your day. You're doing something else. You've got 10 other things that need to happen. And now you're playing the firefighter in the bee yard when you should have been doing something else. But at the end of it, when you kind of step back and you look at the whole scope of things over it, you're like, you know what? If I didn't have these challenges, I would have already been bored with this and moved on.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
There's no boring moments with bees. That's for sure.
No.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Oh, I agree. I mean, that's why I think beekeeping, I enjoy it so much after retirement. I was a maintenance and facility manager for many, many years, always putting out fires, trying to keep things from happening, stay on top of stuff, looking after contractors, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Looking after bees is very similar to looking after a maintenance crew, trying to keep them all pointed in the right direction and stay ahead of them and do your PMs and make plans it's worked out really good for me as far as keeping my head busy as well as physically something to do. So
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
There's a lot of times, though, Keith, I have to say, I would much rather be managing bees than people. People have a tendency to get under your skin in ways that you'd never imagine. Even if you try to put out all these safeguards or things to kind of, make your operation run smoothly. But man, I'll tell you what, they will figure out a way to throw a monkey wrench, much like the bees do at time to time as well. But at least I know where they're coming from, and yeah.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah. Bees, they're a little more predictable than people are. Bees have certain programming, where if certain things happen, you get a certain result based on the inputs. People, you just never know, what works for a couple of them just sets the next one off. And here we go down the primrose path. And people can be very interesting.
That's right.
But yeah, I'm enjoying the bees.
Hey, we kind of have a godfather of people managers here in our midst that's sitting right below me. He's kind of like the godfather of management right here. This guy right here has got a wealth of knowledge, everybody. Wealth of knowledge.
Speak, oh wise man, speak.
That's right.
We are awaiting.
Download us a gold nugget.
Well, I danced a little different drum than most people with the bees. Being the animal husbandry individual all my life, I like to encourage the bees to do their thing in their own way. I don't try to manipulate my honey flow, or I let my Mother Nature take its course pretty much and try to keep them healthy, strong queens. And, but I don't do anything in my hives that would supposedly influence my honey production. If good Lord wants me to have it, well, the bees make it. If you don't, why, they don't. Some years, it varies by years, fellas. You don't get the same stuff every year, and that's strictly due to what Mother Nature provides. Some years the flow is just not there, regardless of how much or how many bees you got or how much you want to make. It don't work.
Mm-hmm.
So you gotta learn to roll with the flow, so to speak. I don't. Like I said, I try to take care of my bees. I'm in bee yard every day. There's not a day goes by that if I'm in the area that I'm not in my bee yards. But I don't try to influence it or cage the queen to produce more honey or anything like that. The old timers, my dad used to do that. That's not a new thing. That's an old time beekeeping mode, I guess, to try to make more honey. I've never danced that drummer, so I'm a little different breed of cat, I guess. But I don't try to influence my bees. I let the bees influence basically what I do. I'll try to keep them healthy and keep them from swarming. I hate swarms with a passion. You guys may know if you see some of my little old videos. I hate bees, but you cannot work bees on April the 1st. And anybody, all my buddies went out there and they aggravated the queen gods and the bee gods, and boy, we've had a mess up here ever since. I've had more swarms this year than I've had in the last 10 years. And it's them dirty side guys from over across the river. I'm telling you, Keith, don't get involved too closely with them, because they do some bad things. That's
Rubbed
all.
off.
Matt and I went over there and plucked all of his queens out, and we tied them to branches around his farm just to keep him busy. Is what we did.
Well, JW, I've got a question for you and a question for the chat, since you're the almighty great guru, and we'll let these guys on the panel tell me what to do. Also, I think I know, but I want to double check. So I had a friend that caught a swarm for me. And of course, he's like most beekeepers. When a swarm comes up, you use whatever equipment you got. And he grabbed some deeps and some mediums and threw them in a box, caught this swarm. And of course, the first thing they did was draw comb on the mediums, and she laid all of her eggs there to start with. So, and they were super frames. So of course they were nice, crisp. That's what they liked. So now today I moved a 10 frame, this nuke, into a 10 frame box, and it was basically about 8 frames because I had 2 nukes on top of each other. So now I've got these 2 medium frames, or 2 medium frames that are kind of deep frames now, right? How do I reclaim those frames that I can cut that bottom piece off and get those medium frames back to him and not waste a bunch of bees? I don't want to waste all that new brood that's there, right? I want it to keep hatching off. It's honey flow. I don't want to lose that right now. So how do I reclaim those 2 frames and get all the bees off of it? So what do you say, Bear Big JW?
I'm going to say get in there and get the hacking. Take your losses and going down the road, because you're not going to straighten them out, I don't think, without taking that extra comb off of there. And that's just my thoughts.
Okay.
You can
Yeah.
I can see
If
that.
you're
Yep.
lucky, you can take that brood and rubber band it into the frame and take
Okay.
and move it with you. You know, but you're gonna have to take it off. And there's no way.
Got like
to
a
get it
cutout.
If
Okay.
I understand what you're saying, it's excess room on the bottom of a medium that's had extra room.
Yep. That's right. That's right.
That's the only
So what
thing
do
you can do, in my opinion. Now that's
So anybody in the chat,
some of these
anybody on here
experts
want to
may
go?
have better ideas, but that's what I would say.
Ricky, that's
Yeah.
a nuke that's going into a 10 frame, 5 frames to 10.
It was a nuke, and I had gotten a couple frames on top of that nuke to draw out. So it was actually like, it was a 10 frame nuke kind of
Gotcha.
scenario. I've got 7 frames now, but I don't want to lose that little bit of brood on the bottom of that colony because it's the flow right now. And I think I can get a little honey out of this swarm that was caught early season, right?
Mhm.
So, how do I get the brood to hatch out and be able to cut that off without wasting like honey or brood or anything?
Yeah.
Yeah. You could, if you had any deep honey supers, you could put that frame in a honey super above an excluder.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Okay.
And then once
And so
they
that
once
will
they all
hatch
hatch out, you just cut it off. But I've got that same thing going on. I did a video. I think it came out middle of last week about a big swarm. I moved into a box, and it was at on a friend's property. And I'd actually I hate to say it, but I kind of forgot it was there. And I went by and checked it one day, and it had a swarm in it. And it was medium frames in a deep box was what the swarm box was. And so yeah, they drew out that extra little bit of comb at the bottom of every one of the drone combs. Now, I had a bunch of empty frames in there, and danged if they didn't draw out every one of the empty frames and fill it full of brood. That was an awesome little swarm. It's gonna make a good colony, but I just put them in a deep box, so they'll draw out the rest of them and make a mess, and that's always a pain because it usually gets weak and gets floppy, and it's a pain to do anything with at some point. But they're strong. I'll leave them alone for now.
Okay, so I did the deep box right. I put a honey super on top of that. It's got drawn cone in it. So at some point, I need to take those 2 cones and put them in a deep box on top of those supers. Is that what y'all are saying, Tom? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I would try to get rid of that drone comb off of that medium frame if you can. Get it above an excluder and let that brood hatch out. At some point, clean it up and move forward, not having to mess with that.
Yeah.
But now would be the time to deal with it, I guess, per se, if you can afford the brood. Now, did they draw worker brood off that medium frame or drone brood?
It was worker brood. If it was drone brood, man, I'd be happy. I'd go,
yeah,
right. And even if the medium frame, right, had been just drone brood, right, but it was all of it was worker brood, and I just don't want to lose that worker brood, right.
I would put it in above an excluder, let it hatch out, and then pull that frame after that brood hatches. Give them other drawn comb for her to lay in, or I guess you can above an excluder, but
yeah. Did I hear you right? Did I hear you say that you had medium frames in a deep box and they drew them down and then put brood in those?
Yeah, it was a swarm that a friend caught me, 2 medium frames, and they drew comb on the bottom of it, of course. It's worker brood, and I want to reclaim those frames back. Plus, it's not allowing her to lay a nice, pretty pattern, right? I love that big pattern that she's laying right now, right? Yep. So I want to reclaim those frames back, give them back to my buddy for giving me, a swarm, right? I don't want to keep those frames, and I like a nice deep frame for my brood. So
it's only 2 frames, 2 medium frames. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say something that goes a little bit against the grain, and there's a reason why. And this is an observation that I see.
Sure.
So I guess the question I would have first, those 2 frames. So you got what, a few inches of comb on there, or at best 2.5 inches of comb
you got it.
On 2 frames. Is it? Are both of them capped, or are they open?
They're all capped. It's all capped right now.
So let me ask you another question. Do you have a lot of hive beetles in your area?
No.
No? Okay. Well, maybe I would change my mind then. So what I was going to say was this. what I would do, I'd cut it off and I'd get rid of it. And the reason why is, and this is
James.
through a lot of observation I had on doing cutouts. In the early spring, I don't notice this being as much of a problem. But as it gets to be a little bit later in the spring, when resources slow down, the temperatures rise up. The one thing I noted, and the hive beetle pressures hit a little bit harder where I'm at. What I noticed on these cutouts, whenever I start to rubber band brood in, because I've cut it and I've completely stressed that colony out by moving it out of their space, I cut open brood. There's some of the caps that are open, and I go to rubber band it in the frames. I can have virtually almost no hive beetles in that colony when I extract it. I go back 2 days later after I've rubber banded brood inside of a colony, and potentially the numbers skyrocketed. Now, so that can only mean one thing. The hive beetles weren't there whenever I sucked them up and put them into there. They were a day or two later. What I think happens here is the brood stresses out. It emits a pheromone, which attracts pests, and one of those pests is hive beetles. So now what you've done is, because you have all that stressed brood that has now either chilled for one, you've cut part of the caps open on a little bit of it. You've now attracted a potential pest, which now increases the amount of stress on that colony even more. So if it was almost emerging brood, like within a day or so, I would have less of an issue with that, because it's a lot more robust. It's not as temperature sensitive. It doesn't have to be kept right at that 94-ish degree mark. It can take a little bit of fluctuation for a short period of time. But that would be the fact that you don't have hive beetles. It may be a different solution. It may not be a problem. Where I'm at, I've started to, on my cutouts that I've done this year, I've actually almost taken 0 brood frames. I dispose of them all, which is sad to say, because there can be a lot of resources in there. But I've just found that it's an attractant, and I feel like I'm actually doing a bigger disservice to the colony at that, as opposed to just getting them some new frames, maybe a honey frame to kind of get them by, and then start putting the feed on them and letting those girls build back some new combs inside there, and then go from there. So that's my only thought. But again, that may be dependent upon where you're at.
Okay. Hey, I appreciate the advice, and I'll take that and try to use that. I'm going to give them a little bit longer here, because we are in the flow and it's rained forever, but probably here in the next maybe week, I'll try to get those frames and get them up above the queen excluder and see what happens, and see if we can't get those out. And worst case, if it dies, I'll just cut that little piece off, and be done with it. So I just want to save as many bees as I can with the flow going on. It's every little bee counts, so I just want to have some honey like Keith Spillman, man. I just want some honey. So
Go down there some night and get you some. What I'd do if I was jealous of Keith, I'd just sneak down there some night.
Someone did suggest that I sneak down there and take some supers, off his hives. I won't say who that was, but that was mentioned the other day. So,
yeah, you got a little bit of honey. You took it back up the hill with you.
Yeah. So yeah, I think they meant like get a bunch of your supers, but
Oh, okay.
He does have a lock gate. I will say that. So I may mess up. He locked me in. I couldn't get out. So
he's got Bertha. I wouldn't get too close with that kind of.
That'd be a long way to tote a super from the bee yard out the end of the driveway.
Yeah,
no doubt. Shoot.
I'd just take the bottled honey. That's what I would do if I was going to steal.
Yeah. I'm sure he's got buckets in his
Bees don't steal anything to work with. You got to be efficient in thievery. You got to get it after it's produced. So.
And Rodney, I have thought about that. Rodney made a good point. He says, "Why don't you just leave the medium frames in there and just let them continue on medium frames?" And the only thing I just like that pretty brood pattern. That's the only reason I want to get them out. And I have already given him 2 frames, but I don't know. I'd like to get them out of there and not be part of the brood nest. I like my brood nest. I'm pretty picky about my brood nest. I want a good clean all the way to the ends, and pollen and honey on the right side and the left side. And I want 8 good frames for her to lay on. So that's kind of what I like to do. So So I had another question for everybody, and me and Tom talked about this a little bit, and it was kind of interesting to start when I started thinking about it today at work. Is when you have rain. Let's say we had rain for 4 days in a row, and your bees can't get out, and those bees are coming off, and they're filling your box up with more bees. Right? It's just continuing to happen. Would you think that might set off a swarming situation because now they have no room in that box? And there was 4 days of bees coming off inside that box. Would that cause your bees to say, "We ain't got more room in this box. We can get out of here"? So what does everybody think about that?
Yeah, I think it definitely could. I mean, according to you set them up. You want them to peak right at a certain time. You're pushing, trying to get all the broods you can to come 2 weeks from now or whatever you're shooting for. When you get to that point and it starts raining, you can't put supers on, and your bee population explodes. Yeah, that could be a problem. Because I'm always real concerned. When I'm pulling supers, when I push all those bees out of you start pulling 3 supers off of a big hive, you're pushing a lot of bees down into the down through the excluder into the brood area. So I don't know any facts about this. I haven't read anything about it or seen any studies, but that just seems like a bad idea to me. So if I can't move supers around and equalize everything, I'll even stick a box of foundation, something on there, so they've got some room to go somewhere, and they're not just squished down in the brood area. But I definitely think it could trigger some a swarm instinct.
I would agree to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you see a swarm. It's going to be after a few days of rain, almost guaranteed. The first sunny day afterwards, you can almost virgin cast swarms or whatever it may be. That's when I'm looking at the trees around the yard at this time of year. Right now, we're almost out of it. I feel like we get rid of some of this rain here and get into the 80s. We're going to be really really pulling in the clover, and they fly with a lot of intent right now. But I sure don't want 4 or 5 days of rain. It's hard to predict, with pulling your splits early spring and where you want your hives to be at a certain time. Well, if the flow peaks or is slow or what have you, you have some delays that can throw you a curveball real quick.
And then Rick here, the collector, he says, when you have 15,000 drones filling up your honey hive, what is the impact? And if you've ever noticed, the drones are always, if they can get into an area where there's honey at, they like to be there. So if you had a deep and a medium and that medium's got honey in it before your queen excluder, them drones are always in that area. So
what do you guys teenage boys hanging around the kitchen.
Yep.
They're definitely eating. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. That's 15,000 drops of honey.
Yeah, no doubt.
That aren't going in a jar.
I think the queen needs an area to lay some drone brood. I think it's like anything else. I think it like cleanses her or whatever you might say. That's just my opinion. I don't know any facts on this, but I think she needs to lay some drones. And any cutouts I've ever done has always had a big spot of drone brood. But when it comes to honey production, I'm always like, I don't want no drones in there. I want it all brood, just go out, worker force and bring me back as much honey as I can. But there's got to be something to letting her lay drones. What do y'all think about that?
Oh, yeah. A healthy hive is going to have a lot of drones in it, period. I mean, that's just part of the game. They add certain value to the hive other than just eating honey and, mating queens, but I don't know how much more. But no, there is a balance, I feel like, whether it even be fair on a pheromone level. So that's what I've seen, at least.
Yeah, this year I've tried to put a green frame in every one of my hives. Maybe not the nukes, but all the big hives have a green frame. Some colonies, the bees go right after it and draw it out and fill it up. Some seem to ignore it, but I think the ones that do fill it up, I have less mess between the boxes as far as drone comb, and less mess when I pull the boxes apart to deal with.
Mhm.
So I kind of think they work if they get used. If they don't get used, obviously nothing changes. I actually snitched a couple and put them in a honey super. I had to use. I was trying to put together any kind of a drone comb super I could to go back on a couple of hives when I pulled that last time. And yeah, I ended up with some green frames in a in a honey super, which they filled it up with honey. It still worked.
They've been on sales.
Yeah. So you got to do what you got to do.
So
But yeah,
actually,
I think hives they've got to have some drones. I mean, that's just part of the way it works.
yeah.
So,
I heard Michael with 21st Bee when he was talking about some of his medium frames that he has that he uses for supers and such. But he also talked about this, and that made a whole lot of sense. He said he even makes the drone cell size comb for mediums too, for people who might want to utilize, like if you run just mediums for honey supers and deeps for your brood. But like Keith just said, if the drones hatch out of there and they go to backfill it, they'll absolutely backfill those cells, or you can utilize it for that. And it's actually much easier to get the honey out of a larger cell than it would be a smaller one. So he was talking about that a little bit. I never even crossed my mind or even thought about it. It made a lot of sense.
yeah, that does make sense.
But to answer your original question, I agree 100% with those guys. Everything that I've ever read or researched, you won't, unless it's a drone layer, you won't ever have a quote unquote healthy colony that doesn't rear drones. You have to think about it like this. When the colony is just coming out of winter, the first thing they're doing is not rearing drones, because they need to build a good workforce population to do that. And they need the drones in there they do offer a little bit of warmth within the brood. So there is another added thing there, but they have to get to the point of reproduction and wanting to swarm and what have you. So they have to build those numbers to do that. And I believe it has a lot to do with what you would call a cohesive colony. And I actually was doing some research over the last week for the presentation I gave down in Springfield, Missouri on Tuesday night. And I started reading a lot of different papers on the queen pheromone and the pheromone from the worker bees inside the colony. And I think often we actually don't give that enough credit. We don't ever talk about that very much. And I think it's a little bit misunderstood. And there has been a lot of research that's been done out there, but I think there should be more of that done. I think it's one of those little mysteries that God put into these little creatures that we don't really fully understand. We understand parts of it, like, a queen has like 4 different glands everywhere from her the QMP gland there on her mandibles, the tarsal gland on her feet or her tarses. You have one called a Dufour's gland, which is on her abdomen near her egg layer. And you also have another one that's in the same proximity, and I can't remember now the name of it. DC might remember. He's pretty good at this kind of stuff. But there's another gland that's back there too that they all have a different purpose in which they communicate. She communicates with the hive, by feeding and grooming through the QMP gland, but also her just walking around in the combs and the frames, that helps with a different aspect or a different area of it. One thing that Matt mentioned earlier is that retinue, when he was joking around with JW, but that absolutely is a thing. If you ever watch a queen sometimes move through and she may pause, there'll be a circle of her quote unquote posse that's encapsulating, just circling around her. And that's that retinue that Matt had kind of mentioned earlier in a joking manner, but it's a real thing. And I think that, again, that's something I was kind of nerding out on for the last probably week or two as I was, the presentation I was given was the queen honeybee and what she means to the colony. And I actually spent a couple whole slides just on the pheromone and how that gets throughout the hives. But I think, again, sometimes we discount that a little bit and we don't really understand that fully. But I'll tell you what, it's something else. There's let me see if I can find it and I'll tell you guys what it is. There is a there's I don't want to say it's a paper, it was a research site that I went to. I think it's called the Holy Habibi.
Yeah.
If I can find
That's
it.
what sent me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you happen to read that, JW?
I haven't yet. I've got it on my to-do list. I want to answer Clay Brunner's question, if I may, Ricky.
Go right ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Anytime's fine, Clay. That's 6286 Pleasant Ridge Lane. That's Olney, Olney, Illinois. And you can bring them anytime. Thank you.
He's
So-
gonna do it.
He needs more bees, guys.
That's what he's trying to do, is get these bees from you, Clay. So, all right, Clay, you asked a very good question. It's something I wanted to wait till we got a lot of people on here, and it is a good time to go ahead and talk about this. I have talked to JW, Matt, and Tom about the bees coming, and their colonies are still not really strong yet. They're on the weaker side. And we've decided to wait 2 more weeks. We're going to do it on the 21st, and we're going to hand out bees on the 22nd here in Ashe County. So if you need to bring them still on the 7th, I can hold those until the 22nd, Clay, or you can come on the 22nd. Now, Matt especially Tom's really busy. Matt's and JW is going to meet me somewhere around Nashville, Lebanon, and around Cayman's area. We're going to steal some of his bees too. No, I'm just kidding about Cayman. But anyway, I'm going to pick those up from them because it's like a 6-hour drive. And I'm going to drive those back to Ashe County. So they're not actually going to be here in Ashe County. But I will be handing the bees out on the 22nd. That will be on a Sunday here. So if you want to coordinate with me and if you want to come early, like I said, on the 7th, I'll be glad to hold those bees until that time. If not, if you want to come on the 22nd or the 21st, if a Saturday's better for you, I should be back probably late Saturday afternoon. We can do that also. And I will buy you lunch. You guys from Virginia that's willing to come down, I'll buy you lunch and take care of you. I was going to have nope, not you, Tom. You're out. You're done for. I was going to have a little signing booth for JW set up, so he could sign autographs. So that's out of the question now. Who knows? We might get the famous Keith Spillman to come up here and sign autographs in the place of JW. Who knows? But maybe Rodney that's on here will sneak up. Who knows? We might get somebody else to fill that spot out. But I do.
He can take my place when he delivers the nukes. He's not going to bring him to me. He might as well do the signing.
I want to say thank you for anybody that's donated bees or has donated money already. You guys are awesome. Can't say thank you enough. And I've got a list right here of people that have already signed up. I don't know if you guys can see this. These are the names. Come on over here. I think we're at 14 people, and some people want a couple of colonies. Some want just one. People don't want to be greedy, and I understand that. If we get extra colonies, I told them that we'll make sure that people get bees. Even if I have to take them from my own bees, I will make sure everybody gets a nuke that's coming. But these guys, the way I've calculated, we should be good. So I want to say thank you for anybody that's donated bees or given money. You guys are awesome. Appreciate that so much. So,
Of course.
All right. Yes, and Philip Morrison has already give a lot of money, actually. He sure has. So, all right. Back to the bees. So, let's see. I had another question I was going to ask you boys about weather. Do you think the weather's going to turn off dry? That was what I was going to ask. Or are we going to stay in this pattern? It seems like this weather's coming from the center playing this area and it's cutting across. Do you think we're going to stick with this pattern, or do you think some of this rain is going to finally die off?
Hold on, just 1 second. Is Matt? Are you sitting in the middle of the train tracks again?
Well, let me tell you, Festus is a train town, so
I'm waiting for the
JW1.
Johnny Cash tune to start up.
the tracks are actually like probably 300 or 400 yards away. But man, when the air is cool enough, I can I'll mute myself.
I just giving you trouble because he said something to you yesterday about who's sitting in the middle of the train tracks. Y'all better move quick because you're fixing to get hit.
It's funny. I couldn't even hear what he said because the train was so darn loud. But no, it does rumble by. Yeah, it goes right down the Mississippi River. So
I didn't know the trains could run on the river.
I didn't know if y'all heard it or not a while ago. Did you hear that roaring sound when I muted my thing and got up out of the chair? I had a neighbor or something. He's cutting out something or something with one of those vibrating cutters or something. Sounded like he was beating on my back door glass was really making the heck of a roar. I didn't know if y'all could hear it or not. That's the reason I muted and got up and closed the door.
I thought I heard something for a minute. What was it? A stump grinder or
I think it sounded like maybe he was cutting something with one of those vibrating cutters,
a vibratory plow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, like he'd be cutting out a piece of drywall for extracting bees or something like some silly people would do, but that's okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Ricky. Go ahead. You had something.
I was just talking about the weather, but DC's got a better question there. So, how long do you leave a swarm before you check it or move it? That's a very good question. What do you guys think?
Well, depends on the swarm.
If it's JW's, it's just leaving. He don't care about it.
2 days. If he's talking about natural swarms, if you're talking about in a swarm box trap or swarm trap, I don't bother them too much till I've seen them start working and act like they're going to make it for sure they're home, because they have been known to move after they move into a box, have they not, Mr. Ramsbottom?
Yeah, I had one go in, and I was going to come back the next day or two after and move it, and they were gone. I mean, they didn't like something, and they were out. Matter of fact, there was another swarm that I had seen happen when I was pulled in with my truck, so I knew exactly what was going on, and there's no mistaking it. When there's a swarm that's big enough, I mean, you'll see it from 100 yards away. There's so many bees. So it migrated right to a swarm trap, and they really congregated on the tree and all over the front and side of the swarm trap, but they didn't go in fully, so they weren't committing to it. And I couldn't help myself. It was only 4 foot off the ground. So I'm sitting there staring at this mass of bees doing all this different communication, and I'm just in awe. I'm not disturbing them other than kind of standing there. But I was able to find the queen, and I got her immediately into a 10-frame box down below it. So they all followed them, and they went into the box, to be with her. So I immediately got them into a 10-frame deep out of that swarm trap, because they weren't going to go into it anyway. I would have lost that. They would have gone, given to Mother Nature. So I kept the queen caged actually in that one to keep them in, and that's why I was late coming on. Actually, with this rain here, I went and screened in a handful of colonies, about half a dozen or so, to move out in the morning first thing. So the swarms, I want to get them. They want to swarm. I'm going to help them swarm about 4 or 5 miles away to another yard. So we'll see.
Yeah, I kind of play it the same way. If the bees behave and go in the swarm box, I'll probably let them stay there for a while before I move them. But if they're dangling on the bottom of the box, they won't go in the box. They're just kind of hanging out on the outside. I'm gonna drop them in a box. I'm not going to wait for them to fly away or decide to move in. But DC asked the question about adding a frame of brood to the swarm to help anchor them. I definitely think that's a good idea. Now, that's one thing. If you do leave the swarm in the box for a while, they're kind of self-anchoring. Once they make their own brood, they're not going anywhere. I've never had them leave. But if I catch a big swarm out of the air or drop one, in a box, I'll definitely I'll open up one of my hives and grab a frame of brood and maybe a honey frame and stick in that box with the new swarm to welcome them to their new home and make them feel like they need to stay. So I think that some open brood really kicks in that maternal instinct of the bees, and I've never lost a swarm that I put a frame of open brood in.
Mm-hmm.
No, don't tell us about that. We don't want to know. Keep it to just keep your lips shut and move on like we didn't see the question.
Yeah,
it's somebody
Tom,
else in
I
the
think
back room that's commenting under via honeybees.
I think JW. Do you see that, JW? Maybe you should answer that one. I'm not sure.
I can answer it personally. We'll do it private too. We'll do it private. No, I actually had one of my friends let me use that to use. He had made it for. I don't know if y'all even. Most people don't even know what we're talking about. But I have a unique honey market set up at my farm, so it's a little different than most folks' market set up. So
basically, the short of it is he's got himself a highfalutin, Rudy Snoot, his words, market trailer. That's what it is.
It's a one-upper.
Go to J.W. Irwin's Soapstone Farm Honeybees YouTube channel. Watch the video, the short that he made, and you'll know exactly what we're talking about. Mm. Subscribe to his channel, everybody.
Subscribe to my channel and send money, please.
Send money. He's going to make a house payment. There's 60 people on here. Go like his channel.
JW, who's politicking now?
That's right.
I'm not politicking. I'm begging.
Hey, Matt, we got him. We got that old guy.
It's not easy to get JW, but
yep. Subscribe to my channel and send money. That's what they all say, isn't it?
Yep,
they don't say it, but they the cost is growing up to put up these videos. So please send CASH.
Every time I go out to JW's place, I just go out there so he'll feed me. So he's got to have money for that,
You don't get hungry. I can tell you that.
He takes care of us.
If I don't get some donations, I won't be able to buy.
Donate to JW. He needs to feed Tom and Matt and Sandy. Miss Sandy might want to go too. You never know.
Yeah, Sandy. Or Lisa.
I know. She likes it.
See what you get into when you get on here with this bunch, Keith. You was on there with old buddy Bruce the other night, and he kept you hitting nailed to the wall, asking all these bee questions. We're not quite as professional. We're a little bit more off the wall.
JB's like, what's going on here?
So JB, if you go to Soapstone Farm Honeybees YouTube channel, look it up on YouTube, and you will see that Mr. Irwin has himself a new. If you look at he made a video yesterday and posted it. A market trailer. If you go there and watch the video, it's not very long. Everybody go there, like, subscribe. Send him donations so he can, be able to eat tomorrow. Make the house payment next month.
Okay, thanks for the advertisement.
There you go.
Let's continue on, Ricky, before they get.
Sorry, we're getting carried away. We're going off topic. Sorry, guys. We're just it happens.
Yeah, DC. For me, if I shake a swarm into a box, I try to leave them a day, just to kind of get them okay, and then early morning I try to pick them up and take them to a new location. That way, they're at a new area. They don't know where they're at. They're going to come out and try to figure out what's going on. Right, doing their little figure eights, trying to figure out where they're at. And I usually don't ever have a colony to leave once that happens. Now, if I catch one in a tree, I really do like to see pollen coming into the trap, and I feel like at that point they pretty much said this is going to be home. If most of the time, the ones I've caught in swarm traps have always seemed to be. Very rarely do I catch a virgin in a swarm trap. I don't know why that is, but I hardly ever do. It's usually a queen, and usually she's laying pretty good right off the bat. So that usually happens pretty quick. But that's just me. That's just how I do it. Different people do it different ways, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I have heard of people, taking a swarm home and it fly off. So, but I've really never had that to happen to me. So as long as I've caught that queen, they don't fly off. And let me tell you, if you've got one in a tree and they keep going back to that limb, even though there's a little bitty cluster on it and you still see them going up to that limb, wanting to go up, and they're not really fanning very much, that queen's still on that limb. And you take them home, and the next morning they'll fly out, or they'll fly out on you in the next morning. So,
yeah. I've always just caged the queen, put them in there, let them go for however long a period until I get back there. I mean, it could be a couple days, could be a week. She'll do fine inside that cage because they're going to keep feeding her. And then, when you come back, I mean, if they've been in that box usually a few days, unless something's wrong there, like a pest issue or something keeps pestering or bothering them or something's not right, they'll usually stick around.
Yep. I will say, if you have a big ball of bees and you can cut the limb and set it on top of the frames, this seems to happen it happens to me about every time. That queen will actually appear at the top of the frame. It will open up like a ball open up, and she will actually end up being you'll see her. She'll be right there, like, oh, she is, and clip her. And once you've got her, boom, you've got that swarm. They're not going to go anywhere after that point. So sometimes she's even crawling on the outside of the swarm, which is very unusual, but you see that sometimes. So.
Yeah. So what's next, Ricky?
Oh, well, I don't have anything next. What do you guys got? We got 10 minutes, 11 minutes. Should we just pick on Keith the next 11 minutes?
Yeah, Keith, what you got?
Yeah, well, Keith, tell us about the kids, Keith. There we go. Let's go there.
Oh, the trip we took today down to the grandkids' school.
Yeah, tell us
Yeah,
about
this
that.
was. I think this was the third trip we'd gone down this year, talking to the kids, and it's all different ages. I guess the youngest is probably around 7 or 8, all the way up to close to 16. But we really enjoy going down there. We've gone often enough now where the kids kind of know us, and it's amazing. Me and Ricky were talking a little bit before the show. I always have like a little quiz to open it up to see what they remembered from the last visit, and it's really amazing how much attention they pay to me. I told Ricky it's kind of scary that they're actually listening to me that much, and and they can remember some of this stuff. But they really have some interesting questions. I enjoy talking to the kids. I always have an agenda of the stuff that I want to talk about, and then once you get into it, the kids, they just blow it apart. We're all over the place. Once we get going, which that's fine. It's for them. I want to try to answer their questions if they're answerable. But they ask questions like, why do bees have wings? That's a tough one. That's just that's how they were made. They have wings, but yeah, I think if you've never done that, you really ought to give it a shot. Go and talk to a bunch of kids. I've got another one coming up at the county library on I believe it's June the 10th. I really don't know how many people are going to show up to that, but I don't have but an hour. So a beekeeper trying to talk about bees for an hour, that's going to be the hardest part. It's going to be like a drag race, revving up and then slowing down in a really short time. But I think I'm going to talk about swarms. That's something that a lot of because there's going to be adults in there too. It's not just kids, but swarms are something people see that they really don't know what they're seeing. They're probably a little scared of them. But I'm going to give a little bit of basic honeybee stuff and talk about swarms. But yeah, talking to that'll be something new. But talking to kids, that's really fun. If you hadn't done it, you should do it. All you guys and all the folks in the chat, you know enough about bees to talk to kids. You know a lot more about bees than they do.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they all want to tell you a story where a bee got after them and chased them around, and it was as big as a cat, and it was just horrible. But they all want to tell you a tale. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Melissa's the one that's always been really good at the kids. So Melissa went to school for early childhood education. So when it comes to dealing with the little ones, I don't even get involved. I'll go help her set up and then leave and go do work or whatever I have to do if it's a local school or something like that. But I like the adults. Melissa's good with the kids. She can corral them in a way that I just don't have it takes a special person for that, right, Keith? It takes a special person to deal with the kids and know how to steer them in a direction that you need to so they can understand things and not get out of control and get crazy and what have you. I'll just stick to the adults. And like JW says, I'll just lie to them, and then I'll just let her deal with the kids. She always ends up doing this one at a local school that's every year. And Melissa will bring honey straws to them. And that's one of the first things they ask because they remember Melissa comes in and does that. They're like, "Do you have honey today?" It's like, "Yes, I have honey." And at the end of this, I will give it to the teacher, and the teacher can give it to you as she sees fit. So, we're going to get through this and what have you. But all the kids, like you said, Keith, they always seem to be very intrigued and have a good time with it. This last time Melissa did one, I think it was at a middle school. And so they're a little bit older kids. And basically she said she had to do multiple different classes of kids. And she said, "Hey, is it okay if you're going to be working in the bee yard today? Can I do a Zoom call with you out there so that the kids can kind of see what's going on in the hives and understand and ask questions?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine." And that was all good until about the third call. And if anybody knows me, when I get involved and get head deep into something, particularly Melissa knows this, I don't really like to be interrupted. So by the third time that we was going, and I was trying to be accommodating, but it was kind of getting a little bit frustrating. If I'm being honest, I had to keep telling myself this was, for the betterment of the community. So I would just, play along with that whole deal. So it's fun though.
Yeah. Yeah.
I tell you what, bee suits work really well. If you have some bee suits around, you will entertain the kids for hours. Everybody wants to try one on. I mean, it works out so well.
We did a trunk or treat last Halloween, and we just stood at the back of Alicia's car while she passed out candy, and kids walked by and just in awe because they had never seen a beekeeper up close, or I'm assuming a good majority of them, So and I had to smoke her, but it didn't have, it wasn't lit. It was just puffing air and maybe a little ash, but. But they really were in awe and just really they really liked it. You could tell. Probably made a memory for them. Because everyone knew what I was. It wasn't like I was a fireman or They knew that guy messed with bees.
That's the beekeeper. Yeah.
The bee guy.
The bee guy. Yeah. What's your favorite part about it, Keith? I mean, I know the kids are awesome, but is there a certain thing that stands out to you that you like more with the kids? I mean, is there a memory or something that stands out for you?
Well, a couple of things today we talked about. They were amazed at the I called it magic, the ability of a hive to make a queen after the queen dies. Using an egg or a young larva.
Yep.
They thought that was pretty amazing that the hive could do that. And of course they thought it was really sad. They asked, what if after that queen, what if she dies, after she emerges, and then, by that time, all of your eggs and your larvae have aged out and they've got nothing left to make it out of, unless the beekeeper sees it and he or she can do something, put another frame in there. Right. But it's also funny too. I had to get permission from the teacher before I got into it. I wanted to make sure it was okay if I said the word poop. So how little boys love that. So talking about how the bees can't go to the bathroom up north in the hives where it stays really cold for several months, and then once they do come out, they make a huge mess. Oh, the kids love that. You know, that's something they can relate to. They thought that was great. And then one little boy brought up today that he heard that honey was bee vomit. Yeah, I'm sure y'all have heard that.
Yep.
So I tried to steer it away from vomit and tell them about the 2 honey stomachs, and one's, the honey stomachs before the digestive stomach, and it's really just a little tank that they pump in and out of. So I'm trying to get it away from the vomit word, because that just sounds horrible. They're just transferring it from one bee to another. They're not vomiting on each other. And maybe I swayed a few where if they hear that word in the future, maybe they'll say, no, that's not exactly how that works. So,
I can hear the kids coming home right now, Keith, and be like, well, what did you learn about in school today? Well, we learned that bees poop and they vomit everywhere.
Yeah. That's probably what will get back to the teachers. What are you teaching our kids?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you just have to find something that you can see their eyes light up when you put a slide up there. They love the slide showing the bees having hairy eyeballs. That's something that this totally they think is great. And having 5 eyes, that's great. You just have to find the keys of cool stuff that you can see them light up when you put the slide up there, and then you need to hang around this one for a little bit and take all the questions. So. But yeah, I really enjoy it. Maybe that comes back from chasing around a bunch of maintenance guys for 40 years. I can keep a bunch of youngins amused for an hour and a half. Maybe that all goes together. Maybe I should buy the kids donuts. That always work for my maintenance guys to get them in a good mood. So
everybody's happier on a full stomach, right, Keith?
There you go. All right, a sausage biscuit. So yeah.
If you want to really impress them, I've done several 4-H's and things. If you want to really impress them and get their attention, take you 2 or 3 drones, and they know honeybees sting. Take you 2 or 3 drones, stick them in your mouth, and then I
can see that.
Let him fly off. They can't fly.
I can see this going bad once they get home.
Yeah.
Hey, Dad, watch this.
That's what I usually do. About to get their attention.
Yeah, I try to always put disclaimers in there because one of the videos that I showed them had one of my hives swarming, and I'm standing there in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, videoing the swarm. And then they ask about that, and I'm like, do not do this at home. If you see a swarm, you don't have to be terrified, but don't do this. Go tell an adult. You can tell them what it is now. So, but yeah, don't do what I do. So,
tell them I am a trained professional.
Yeah, I'm a trained professional. I'm an untrained professional.
There you go. I like that.
I'm just a stunt guy. I'm a fill-in.
Yeah. We all had our first swarm. So,
yeah, that's right.
I haven't had a big one this year that I could get in the middle of. All of them I've found them in boxes, or I've got called off the property to catch a couple hanging in a bush or in a tree. But I hadn't had the pleasure of being in a cloud of bees this spring.
Oh gosh, just go over to JW's house. He'll probably have 6 of them tomorrow.
Yeah.
I was JW a couple of years ago, man. I was having swarms every day. It was like the what they call it, the swarm du jour. The swarm of the day. It man, I ran through a lot of wood that year. So
what's really bad is that they were mine.
But these were mine. They were
somebody else's, but I don't like them if it's mine.
Yeah, that was the year I had the bright idea to feed a lot of sugar and draw out a bunch of comb in early spring, which I did. It worked really great, but man, the bees were zizzed up. I couldn't keep them in a box. They all wanted to run away. So yeah, we won't be doing it exactly like that anymore.
That's the art part of beekeeping, right, Keith?
Yeah. That was what was that funny artist that cut his ear off? Picasso. He did some funky paintings. Yeah, that was that one. It wasn't a Leonardo.
Mhm.
for sure.
Well, I'll tell you, I think my problem resulted from I had some bees, some folks come in here from the dirty side of the river and stirred my bees all up, and they wanted to leave. They said, get the heck out of here, away from here.
Yeah.
Because the grass is greener on the east side, on the west side of the river. That's why. Grass is
These
greener.
people are crazy. They do bad things to us. We're leaving. I think that's what my trouble was, but I don't know that for sure.
I'm gonna blame it on Melissa. She's not here to defend herself.
I think she may be listening though.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think she's here.
Wait for the comment to pop up.
That's why I don't say nothing about my wife. I think she's on here listening at all times, so I have to be very careful.
Well, I hope she's feeling better. That's all I'm going to say.
Yep. She's had a rough time.
Yep.
That kidney deal was not too much fun.
Yeah. Well, I probably would have been crying the whole time. So.
Yeah. We're going to stop right there tonight. I want to say a big thank you to Keith Spillman for coming on and being with us. And, of course, always nice to have Matt and JW on with us. And that Tom feller, I guess he had to stay home, today, so he had to be here. But, but Keith, we do appreciate you. And again, I want to say from bottom heart, thank you for reviving those 2 colonies, because you definitely revived them from when I set them off. So down to your place.
No problem. I enjoyed looking after them.
Good to see you.
Enjoyed helping you guys out.
Yep.
Good to see you, buddy.
Yep. But we want to say good night to everybody, and we'll see you next Thursday. And God bless.
See y'all.
Good night, y'all.